So usually when we introduce internal controls, we don't bring internal controls because we mistrust teams. But internal controls are usually about protecting your organization's mission, your people, and most importantly, your funding. There are a number of organizations where controls looked fine on paper but completely collapsed under pressure. So I want to walk you through the 5 red flags from my experience that tells me immediately that an organization's internal controls are weak even before I review a single policy. So if you are a nonprofit founder, an executive director, a board member, or a finance leader, this video is for you. So let's get into it. For context, I bring almost 2 decades of experience in nonprofit finance leadership, working with both local and international organizations. My work has included multi-country operations, donor-funded programs, and matrix reporting structures where finance teams report functionally to global finance while operationally to country operations or country directors. So I have supported organizations and I have led organizations through audits, donor reviews, system implementations, internal control failures, and recoveries. So what I'm sharing today is based on what I have seen repeatedly across regions, funding models, and even different organizational sizes. So why do I see most nonprofit organizations have failure in their internal controls? So most nonprofits do not have controls that are weak because they don't care. They actually do care a lot. But you find that they have weak controls because of the growth pressure, donor complexity, staffing gaps, and operational urgency. You find that there are changes in strategy, there are changes in program implementation, there are even changes in structure. But the policies and controls that work hand in hand with this are never updated or are never instituted. And so controls slowly erode until something breaks. So these 5 red flags show up long before fraud, even long before an audit finding, or even before a donor loss. They're just subtly sitting there waiting for something to break so that they kind of show up. And so red flag number 1 is what I call the concentration of control. So when one person can initiate, approve, process, and reconcile transactions, your controls are already compromised as they are. In small or growing nonprofit, this often shows up as one finance officer preparing payments, approving payments, posting transactions, and even reconciling the bank accounts. Even if that person is ethical and competent, the risk is structural and not necessarily personal. And in multi-country environments, I see this sometimes at the country level, especially where staffing is lean. So weak controls here don't just increase fraud risk, they increase the risk of error, the burnout, and also undetected misstatements in the financial reports. And good controls separate decision making, execution, and verification even when teams are small. And I talked about how you can achieve a segregation of duties in small teams in my previous video. So the red flag number 2 is what I call the informal approvals. Approvals that are informal or retrospective. So if approvals happen through WhatsApp messages that are not the official communication channels for an organization, or through phone calls or verbal communications, or after the transactions has already occurred, then definitely it is not control. And sometimes I hear when people say that we trust our team or we approved it later. Approval after the fact is documentation and it's not control, and that needs to be understood. In matrix organizations, this gets even worse when sometimes at the country level, country directors approve operationally, but finance teams who are part of the approval process, they are very unclear or are inconsistent, or sometimes they are called again to approve in retrospect. It beats the purpose of the control that has been drawn. So strong controls require clear, documented, pre-transactional approval thresholds that are aligned between finance, operations, and also programs. So the red flag number 3 is the reconciliation lateness. When reconciliations are delayed or are treated as a formality, then this here is a red flag. If reconciliations are weak, months late, errors are piling up in silence. And if reconciliations are prepared but never reviewed, then the controls actually does not exist. In global nonprofits, for example, I have seen situations where country teams submit reconciliation purely to tick the box of month-end reporting, but no review at the regional or at the global level happens. So therefore, that control is non-existent. Reconciliations are sometimes seen as an admin work, but they are actually not. They are your early warning signs. They warn your system that something could be broken if things are not reconciling. And when reconciliations break down, problems resurface during audits when it's actually already too late. So the red flag number 4 is that there are policies that are existing, but these policies are not lived. It is the paper control without practice. Many organizations have beautifully written finance manual, sometimes written because they are pursuing a particular funding and it requires them to have a particular way in which they have written their manual, and sometimes they develop them because the auditors will ask for them. But when you observe their daily operations, staff do not follow them. Expenses claim bypass policy, procurement shortcuts are normalized, and exceptions becomes the rules of operations. And in international nonprofits, this often happens when sometimes global policies are not adapted to the local operational realities. Yes, the policy needs to be one across board as an organization, but putting this into operationalization needs to be in the context of the country. The SOPs must be contextualized as per the country operational realities. So controls only work when people understand them and believe in them and actually apply them consistently. And then the red flag number 5 that I see is that boards only see financials at audit time. This is the 5th red flag. It shows that the board is disengaged from their financial oversight role. If the board only sees financial reports during audits or during a crisis, controls are already weak. So internal controls are strengthened when boards review financial reports regularly. Quarterly, I would say, or even biannually, but quarterly is always a good place to have your finance committee having a review of the financial reports. And the controls also are strengthened when variances are well explained and risks are discussed proactively. Of course, for those organizations that have matured in their internal controls, we also have a live risk register that is kept and updated, even sometimes quarterly, with the collaboration between finance teams and program teams. And so in most nonprofits, boards are a critical line of defense. So they are not just a ceremonial body, and therefore their responsibility in financial oversight cannot be emphasized enough. And so when you see silence at the board level, it is not stability most of the time, but it is a visibility problem. So from how I have looked at it, what strong controls actually look like for me is that strong internal controls are not complicated. They are well documented in policies and they are actually operationalized. They are kept clear, practical, proportionate, and consistently applied. They align finance, operations, and programs. They respect local realities while maintaining global standards for organizations with multi-country operations. But most importantly, they protect the mission of the organization and not just the money. So in closing, if you recognize 2 or more of these red flags in your organization, it means it's time to strengthen your foundation before growth exposes the cracks. Internal controls are not a donor requirement. They are a leadership responsibility. So if this video was helpful, you can like the video, you can subscribe to this channel for more videos like this, and you can also share it with someone leading a nonprofit team who you think could drive value out of it. And remember, financial clarity builds credibility, and credibility sustains impact. Thank you for watching.